So, I'm sure you guys are all aware that Community Doubles is here to stay for a little bit longer now. And I think this is a good start towards remedying the abhorrent playlist problem within Halo 5. Now, don't get me wrong, the community playlists and things like Mythic Shotty Snipers and things like that, they're all great game modes. And they're all great playlists. But it sort of sucks that 343 have kept them only for a weekend. I can sort of see where they're coming from. I'm gonna reference a game that I used to be a massive fan of, but now really dislike. League of Legends. They had an April Fool's game mode a couple of years ago called Earth, which was hilarious fun for a little bit. And everybody demanded it stay. And Riot were just like, no, we're not gonna let it stay. Because if we let it stay, it'll become stale. Now that's one very specific example, but I don't think that relates to Halo 5 in terms of some of the more base playlists. Some of the things that are sort of expected from Halo games nowadays. Things like Team Snipers, Team Doubles, Action Sack. Halo 5 seems to be missing a lot of these, what most people, or at least myself, would say are core playlists that sort of make the game unique, as it were. You don't see many first-person shooters out there nowadays with crazy game modes like Oddball. These classic game modes, I mean Oddball is a classic as far as Halo goes. Things like Oddball, Juggernaut, VIP. You don't see these in other shooter games. You get your standard team deathmatch, you get your dominations and things like that. And I feel that Halo 5 has tried to pander a little more towards the community that enjoy those game modes, and have left out some of the core Halo experiences, the core Halo multiplayer experiences that people have known and loved over the last decade or so, since Halo's online multiplayer became a real successful thing back in Halo 2. And it sort of saddens me to see that I'm not going to say they're easy to implement, especially not like Infection. Infection was insane. It's probably the most polished, most fun game mode I've seen added to Halo 5 since its conception. There's a lot of custom game potential, and a lot of the community that are really crying out for these classic game modes that bring back some of the Halo experience they used to love. Now you could call it fan service, and a lot of people are going to be like, well, Strongholds is better and things like that. But I'm gonna stick to my guns on this one and say that 343 need to, I don't want to say pander to the old fans, but if they want to keep the old fans interested, they need to at least show some sort of support. They've started adding guns back in like the Halo 2 battle rifle and the CE Magnum, and that's a step in the right direction. I don't want the game to become, Halo 2 anniversary, or, another Halo 3. Because there's a lot about Halo 5 I enjoy. It is still probably the Halo game I've played the most of, albeit not a great deal multiplayer, since I bought my Xbox One, and the Master Chief Collection came out way before that. I've played barely any of that, and I've played tons of Halo 5. But I can see where a lot of the community are unhappy that the older fans are not being catered to as well as the newer fans. Now don't get me wrong, the newer fans obviously make up a large amount of the sales demographic of Halo 5. But you shouldn't forget your roots, and you should at least try and support the community that made you. As for an actual change, I know a lot of what I talk about is theory for the most part, but I'm going to suggest an actual change here. Let's have a weekly rotating playlist that's there all week, it's there all the time, that one week it'll be Team Snipers, the next week it'll be Community Doubles, the next week it'll be Oddball, the next week it'll be, solely Capture the Flag, the next week it could be a mix like a 5v5 Slayer. I'd love to see sort of an extra playlist that at least sort of brings a little more into the multiplayer scene, because the multiplayer scene at the moment is it's about as competitive as it can get. I can see that 343 have tried their hardest to make Halo 5 a competitive shooter. And it takes away a little bit of the charm of Halo. The reason Halo was competitive back in the day was because people made it competitive. The game wasn't designed to be a hardcore competitive shooter. But there was a game there that people enjoyed playing, people enjoyed watching, and it just lent itself really well to a competitive scene. You can't fake what Halo 3 had as far as a competitive scene went, but it seems that 343 and Microsoft are putting as much effort and money as they can into, I don't want to call it a fake competitive scene, but it's a forced competitive scene that is a shadow of the Halo series' competitive scene's former self. And it sort of makes 343, at least in my eyes, look like they're trying to jump on the esports bandwagon that's happening right now with League of Legends and Counter-Strike and StarCraft and Dota, and those games all get millions of viewers when they have their major tournaments. And it seems that 343 is trying to just sort of jump on that bandwagon, or at least Microsoft is trying to jump on that bandwagon to make, if we can't squeeze microtransactions out of them as well as we'd hoped, maybe we can squeeze esports viewings out of them as much as we've hoped and sell them tickets and things like that. But the Halo competitive scene is tiny in comparison. The HCS Pro League gets 10,000 viewers if it's lucky. There are some independent streamers that get more viewers than that on a regular basis. I mean, a RuneScape streamer had 40,000 viewers the other day. 40,000 viewers. The HCS manages a fifth of that if it's lucky. On a good day, it manages 10k. I've seen streams where it's 5k. And I know the European scene is tiny compared to the American scene, but the American scene is still only hitting those sort of 10k viewer goals. And 343 and Microsoft are putting millions and millions of dollars into this. I don't see a return on investment here for either 343 or Microsoft. They've forced a competitive scene, and it's ingrained in both the game and the way the game is being presented to the market. It's slowly killing off the social gamer that came to play Halo to have fun. I can understand they made Warzone as their sort of casual-esque game mode, but it just doesn't feel like the casual Halo of old. Now, I'm not saying we need to go back to Halo 3, but look at what your previous games, I know it wasn't a 343 game, it was a Bungie game, but look at what the previous games in your series did right, and see how you can expand upon those. I've got no problem with the way Halo 5 plays. The multiplayer is solid, but it's too competitive. There is nowhere for me to go into Halo 5 and chill out and shoot some dudes. I'm constantly worrying about rank or winning matches or not wasting my rec cards. And it makes Halo 5, at least the multiplayer, sort of stressful to play at times. I mean, I play Halo 5 a lot, don't get me wrong. I used to play games like Counter-Strike and things like that a lot, but a game that is, at least to me, solely focused on competitive, dies out a lot quicker than a game that gives me more options and lets me play for fun. I mean, Halo 5 and Counter-Strike are sort of in the same bunch here, where there are other things to do in the game that aren't as competitive. Think in Counter-Strike you have aptly named competitive mode, and then you have the arena and the ranked playlists in Halo 5. But all the other game modes in Counter-Strike, bar, the fan-created mini-games and whatnot, because those could be likened to custom games in Halo, your deathmatch, your demolition and things like that, they're just not fun to play. You'd rather go into a game of Counter-Strike and play a game of Counter-Strike, rather than play one of the shitty little spin-off game modes that they have there, just to help the newbies sort of get used to the game. And Halo 5 is sort of the same. You have your ranked playlists, and those are the only ones that people really care about. bar Infection and say Big Team Battle because they have their own communities. And other than that, there's not really much for you to play. There's nothing interesting. There aren't really many unranked playlists that you can just have fun in. And that is going to hurt Halo 5, at least in my opinion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like or a comment, maybe even subscribe, and stay classy.